Welcome to this episode of Retro Tech Revival, where we dive into the fascinating world of retro computing. I'm your host, and today we're exploring a unique project that's reviving the x87 floating point unit emulation for legacy 486SX processors on the NetBSD operating system. Yep, you heard that right. We're talking about breathing new life into older hardware that many thought was long forgotten. So what's the deal with this project? Well, it's all about restoring support for FPU emulation in NetBSD's kernel, especially for those ancient 486SX class processors that lack hardware floating point support. This revival adds back the original math emulate option into NetBSD 10.x and newer versions. Pretty cool, right? Now you might be wondering, why is this important? Just imagine you have all this vintage computer hardware and the software that runs on it, but suddenly you can't perform essential computations. Think of how, in the 90s, floating point calculations were critical for everything from gaming to scientific applications. Well, this project restores that capability, and it's like finding a missing piece of a puzzle. What's intriguing about this endeavor is its work-in-progress nature. It's a bit like restoring an old classic car. You might run into some bugs or quirks along the way. For example, while some floating point operations work perfectly, like loading values onto the FPU stack or storing values back, there are still some functions that bring in unexpected results, particularly those tricky logarithmic calculations. And speaking of functions, let's take a look at some capabilities that have been successfully emulated. For instance, the FAD, FSUB, and FML operations, all the essentials for arithmetic, are functioning as expected. It's a great feeling to have that basic arithmetic go smoothly, right? However, there's also a list of operations that are still a work in progress, like the file 2x computation. So we're not quite there yet. Imagine trying to compute something and getting odd results. That'd be frustrating, wouldn't it? Especially when you're counting on it for accuracy. Switching gears a bit, let's talk about the installation process for this FPU emulation. For those adventurous enough to try it out, it involves compiling the kernel and configuring it to include the math emulate option. You'd start with sourcing the relevant files and then going through a series of commands to compile your very own NetBSD kernel. There's something so satisfying about compiling your own operating system for vintage hardware. And if you run into any issues or have ideas for improvements, there's a way to reach out. The project's author, Mikhail Zakharov, is open to questions and suggestions. It's always great to see a community around these niche projects, don't you think? Before we wrap up today, I want to reflect on the broader implications of such projects. They remind us of the importance of preserving technology's history and ensuring that even the oldest equipment can still find relevance in today's world. Imagine the stories those processors could tell. So, what do you think about the idea of FPU emulation for legacy systems? Do you think it's worth the effort to bring back these old technologies? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Retro Tech Revival. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue to explore the treasures of computing history. Until then, keep that tech spirit alive.